So these soldiers, they must have just been bored to death. They must have been bored, because here they are on the day that the crucifixion is scheduled to occur, the day that they are going to crucify Jesus Christ. The soldiers are not reading a book. The soldiers are not checking inventory. The soldiers are not making sure the cross is sturdy enough. The soldiers are playing dice. It's ironic, it is, that these soldiers are here at the foot of the cross playing dice and understanding, well, what is occurring on the cross they cannot afford to be without. They cannot afford Jesus to be off that cross, yet they're playing dice while Jesus is dying for their sins. I've always wondered, what really were they doing? What were they really doing? What were they really thinking? Yes, I'm pretty clear they were bored, because they probably went through crucifixions on a regular basis. They knew the routine. The person would show up, they would nail them to the cross, they put the cross up, and the person would die. I'm sure they're very used to the routine, but what was it this day that made them go beyond the norm? They did not read a book. They weren't making phone calls. They weren't even considering what they were going to have for lunch or dinner that evening. They were playing games. Here they are at the cross. So I had to figure out what made them at that day play games at work. What was it at that day that made them think that this was more important than Jesus dying on the cross? Well, then it came to my mind. It was clear to me they understood who Jesus really was. They understood this was not some criminal. They understood that this Jesus was far different than anybody else they had to crucify. They understood this was the Jesus that turned water into wine at the wedding of Cana. They understood that this was the Jesus who spit on the ground and made a mud pack and put it on the man's eyes and told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam, and his eyes were open. This was the same Jesus who spoke Lazarus' name 3 times and Lazarus came forth. This was the same Jesus who fed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves. They understood this was not a criminal, and they understood this was not an ordinary individual. So they kind of figured out, if this was somebody special, I need to get a piece of him. Here they are, and it says that they figured it out. They were going to look at all of his clothes and make sure they got a piece of it. The text says that they look at his clothes, and each person got a part of his clothing. Then it came down to the coat. They thought, hold on a minute, let's not mess up the coat. This coat is a sartorial splendor, because this coat has no seams in it. It's just one piece, and it just drapes over his shoulders. Let's not mess up this coat. Let's not rip this coat. Then they thought, well, not only is this a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, but do you realize this could be the coat that the woman touched the hem of and that had healing power? They thought, let's not mess up this coat, because this coat may also have some waterproof properties, that Jesus walked on the water. Let's not mess up this coat. This might be a magic coat, and if it's not a magic coat, it's a special coat. And let's not mess it up, because whoever wins the dice game, you got a major coat. I'm trying to make excuses for these soldiers playing games that day at Calvary. What really messes me up, though, is not only did they play games, it's the location of where they were playing the game. I understand people pitch pennies. I understand people shoot dice. I understand people do a whole lot of stuff. But why did they need to do it at Calvary? Why at the foot of the cross, where their life was being purchased? What was the need for them to play games? See, I don't get it. You have to understand, Calvary is an important place in all of our lives. And if there's one place you shouldn't be playing around, it's got to be at the foot of the cross. If there's one place where you should not be playing games, it's the place where your salvation was bought. It was the place where grace was given. It's got to be the worst place for you to be playing games. In fact, you have to understand, not only is this cross the worst place to play, but this cross is being converted and changed and transcending what its purpose is. Initially, the cross stood for punishment and shame, but now Jesus has turned it into a place of love and liberation, and for that reason alone, they should not be playing dice. But then again, when I look at this text and I look at where we are in the world today in 2013, there's a whole lot of folks still playing dice at the cross. In fact, if you're really honest with yourself, there's a whole lot of folks shooting craps at the church. Yeah, we're playing craps at church. Anytime the church is silent on the subject of sin, that's the church playing craps. Anytime we fail to speak up for the least of these, that's the church playing craps. Anytime the church thinks it's more important for them to be important